You ever get that feeling when you move somewhere new, thinking you're finally getting some peace, and instead you walk straight into a kingdom ruled by a clipboard and a smile that could curdle milk? That was my welcome to Maplewood Bluffs, where lawns were measured in inches and personalities in power trips. And right at the top of that little suburban monarchy was a woman named Clarissa Beaumont, the kind who wore pearls to prune her roses and quoted HOA bylaws like scripture. My place sat right at the edge of the community, 1 acre, with a gravel driveway leading up to an old iron gate I'd installed myself after a few packages went missing last summer. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine, black metal sturdy chain padlock the size of a fist. But to Clarissa, that gate was apparently the ugliest thing since graffiti. I found out the hard way one Monday morning when the sound of metal grinding woke me up before my coffee did. I walked out to see her standing there, pink sweater bolt cutters, and a look like she'd caught me committing treason. This gate violates Section 9A of the community aesthetic policy, she announced like a judge delivering a sentence. I just stared at her. You cut my chain. I removed a non-compliant obstruction, she corrected with that tight little smile people wear when they think rules make them gods. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but I can read a property map. That gate sits outside the HOA boundary. You can literally see the county marker in the dirt. I told her that. She adjusted her sunglasses and said, visible structures are subject to visual review, which in Clarissa speak meant if she could see it, she owned it. By lunchtime, I had 3 violation notices in my inbox, 1 for the gate, 1 for a dead oak I hadn't dug out yet, and 1 for unapproved gravel composition. I laughed, drove straight to the hardware store and bought a new chain, a heavy-duty steel-toed kind rated for anchoring boats. When I locked it back on, it clanged like a prison door. I figured that'd be the end of it. 2 nights later, my porch camera caught her again sneaking up my driveway with bolt cutters muttering to herself about visual harmony. Sparks flew when she hit the hardened steel. She cursed, dropped the cutters, and stormed off. The next morning, I got another notice taped to my mailbox. Your chain has been deemed aggressive in appearance. I nearly spit out my coffee. Aggressive in appearance. What does that even mean? At that point, it wasn't about the gate. It was about control. Clarissa's entire reign depended on everyone bowing down, and I was the one fool who didn't. So I printed out an email from the county zoning office confirming my gate was outside HOA authority, laminated it, and taped it to the post like a Declaration of Independence. Clarissa responded with a lemonade stand war rally in her driveway, complete with folding chairs, flyers about restoring community order, and speeches about how one man's defiance threatens us all. Someone filmed it and sent me the clip. She was pointing at my property like a preacher condemning sin. The next day, my mail went missing. Then my packages. Turns out the HOA's mail security committee, which she'd apparently invented, had decided to reroute deliveries for safety. I found my Amazon box sitting on her porch. She smiled and said, "You're welcome." That's when I put up the sign, "Smile, you're being recorded." A week later, in the middle of a thunderstorm, I caught her again this time, trying to pry the latch loose with a screwdriver, rain plastering her hair to her face. "You can't keep this gate here forever," she shouted. "You're right," I said, raising my flashlight. "I might upgrade it." The next morning, she sent out a draft for a new HOA policy requiring all visible gates to match approved white picket designs. Out of 50 homes, mine was the only one affected. So I replied all to the HOA mailing list with screenshots of her trespassing and the zoning email that said she had no jurisdiction. The subject line read, "Unauthorized entry and property damage documented evidence." That thread blew up like fireworks. Half the neighbors were horrified. The other half sent me messages like, "Finally, someone stood up to her." But Clarissa didn't back down. 2 nights later, she tried again, only this time my upgraded chain held. and when the wind slammed the gate shut behind her, the lock clicked. She was stuck inside my driveway, shaking the bars like a zoo exhibit. I came home 2 hours later, headlights washing over her red face. "You locked me in," she yelled. I looked at the sign. "Private property. Enter at your own risk. You can't do this." "I didn't," I said. "You did." When the sheriff showed up, she accused me of kidnapping. Deputy Jones, a guy I'd met at a local cookout, took one look and said, "Ma'am, you're trespassing." The silence that followed was sweeter than music. He asked if I wanted to press charges. I said no, but I asked him to file a report. That part was important. The neighborhood went wild after that. Some said I went too far. Others called me a hero. Clarissa, of course, doubled down, emails, meetings, memos, all of it. Until one day, Karma handed me the perfect gift. I noticed she was having vinyl fencing installed. Vinyl, something explicitly banned by her own bylaws. I took photos and sent them to the entire HOA with the subject line, "Question regarding rule consistency." Within an hour, half the board resigned. Clarissa tried one last power grab, a bright orange non-compliance sticker on my gate post. I peeled it off, dropped it into her tote bag, and said, "Effective immediately. My patience is 2. 2 weeks later, I took every piece of evidence, videos, reports, county letters, and filed for a property variance, officially removing my land from HOA authority. It got approved. I was free. That weekend, I hosted a cookout by the Gate Burgers Music, Beer, Laughter. I told everyone they could file the same paperwork if they wanted. People cheered. Someone yelled, "Free Maplewood." Clarissa watched from across the street, clutching her clipboard like a life raft. After that, things started to change. The HOA's insurance company dropped them for excessive internal disputes. Clarissa's empire crumbled. One morning, her SUV was gone. The neighborhood was quiet again. A week later, a small package showed up on my porch. Inside was a single silver chain link and a handwritten note. "You locked me in once. Never again." I laughed, but part of me knew it wasn't over. People like her don't disappear. They regroup. Sure enough, months later, flyers appeared in mailboxes. Community Restoration Project, rebuilding what was lost. At the bottom was a tiny oak leaf logo, the same symbol from the old HOA. I went to one meeting out of curiosity. A man in a blue blazer was speaking about order and standards, and in the back, sitting quiet with her head bowed, was Clarissa. I didn't say a word. I just watched. Same script, different costume. So I decided to fight her the only way that worked, by building something she couldn't touch. A real community. We hosted block parties, potlucks, barbecues, no rules, no fines, no forms. Just people being human again. Kids drew chalk on the sidewalks, dogs ran free, and no one cared about mailbox shades or gravel texture. When Clarissa was finally arrested for fraud and trespassing after her little restoration scheme went up in flames, I didn't even feel angry, just tired. When the judge sentenced her to 18 months in counseling, I wasn't there to celebrate. I was home sitting on my porch with my dog, watching the sunset reflect off that same steel chain. A few months later, her husband dropped off a note that said, "Thank you for standing up when the rest of us couldn't. She wasn't always like this." I folded it, tucked it away, and whispered, "I know." Life's quieter now. The lawns are mismatched, the fence is crooked, and it's beautiful. Freedom always is. The old gate still stands, the chain gleaming in the light. Sometimes I hear it creak in the wind and think about how close I came to losing more than property. I could have lost myself in the fight. But instead, I learned something. Walls aren't always about keeping people out. Sometimes they're what keep your sanity in. So yeah, Clarissa's gone, but her legacy. It's a reminder that control never builds community. It kills it. And freedom. Well, it looks a lot like a backyard barbecue and a crooked fence. Tell me what you think. Did I go too far locking her in, or was it justice served cold? Drop your thoughts below because I've got a feeling everyone's lived next to a Clarissa at least once.